Hey guys.
Hey, how's it going? Are you going nuts?
Yeah, yes I am. Matter
Literally.
of fact, that is the thing.
I know, it's hard. That's what today has been a rough day for me. At least you have
Yeah.
one that'll do their schoolwork. I have one that doesn't want to do anything. Ah,
This is it's Zoom is funny. It's kind of like perpetually it's like the Brady Bunch, you know.
I know, right? Well, we use that at Widener, but then now they're saying, people are like attacking, these Zoom people are coming in and attacking meetings with like pornographic messages. Did you see that?
No, but I guess if I want to stick up a pornographic message while we're on here today, then I've got an excuse. I can say it was those hackers.
Well, my friend's daughter, who is working from home, and usually she lives in New York. One of her meetings got hacked by somebody. And it was like, then she said somebody came on and was like speaking foreign language and just weird. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it's always something, isn't it? You can't, it's like, you can't just go in and have like use a Zoom meeting, it's like all
Right.
these things. And then you got to worry about kids like that are Zooming with their teachers. Like,
Right.
it's like you don't need that coming on.
I love the background.
Right. Fantastic. Greg wins the day for the background.
What's that?
Greg
Sorry,
wins
what'd you say?
for today for the background.
Oh yeah, there you go.
I got a few in the waiting.
That's the big talk, I guess. Now, got
Oh, yeah.
nothing else fun to talk about.
Yeah, I had my the last work meeting I had. I shouldn't put up what my background was. It's inappropriate.
Definitely do it.
I was a judge. I was a judge at bikini contest here, so that was
Perfect.
yeah.
Hey, you're thinking of warm weather. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right, exactly.
Let's justify it. Just gotta put it in justifiable terms.
Yes.
Got to use a little humor during those times. You really do.
Well, Sam looks nice and comfy out there and enjoying the weather. That's cool.
Getting a nice tan on while we do it.
There you go.
Yeah,
I was Zooming with my students this morning. One was just rolling out of bed. I'm like, nice of you to join me. I'd be boring you. She was like yawning. I go, I guess we're boring you this morning. They're not used to getting up by 9 a.m.
Okay.
A hard knock life.
So I do believe we've got everybody here. We've got 17 participantes. And I know you guys have informally met Lori, who was the most outspoken student in the last class. That was good. I like questions. So, but I will, I'll let Lori do introductions, but Lori is a good friend of mine through volleyball. She is one of the parents of a girl who my daughter played with, McKenna. And Lori is also what is your official title? You're more than just a nurse, right? You're
What's my official title for what?
Well, I'll let you introduce yourself and what you do,
Yeah.
so that way I don't get anything wrong.
And
But
I'm gonna,
Lori's, she's going to talk to us a little bit about an experience that she had regarding loss and and I guess specifically having to do with being in a helping profession, in a medical profession, and how that kind of juxtaposed with the loss as well. It's kind of a unique perspective. So I will let you take over then, Lori.
Okay. Well, first, I just kind of want to see, because it's hard. I don't get to see all you in person. I'm glad I get to see your pictures, because the last time I didn't get to see your pictures and your faces, and it's really hard. Last year I did speak to Jeff's class, and I got to meet people one-on-one, and it's really a challenging time, and I'm sad not to be able to meet you in person, because it is really a personal topic to me. I'm going to actually, I have a screen. I was trying to do it on my students this morning, a Prezi. So I'm hoping I can share the screen with you and talk to you a little bit about my personal experience. I'll get to, just my question to you is, just so I have an idea of, what you guys do or what your major is. I did go around last year and say, ask what is your major? Because then I know kind of what the audience I'm speaking to, because I know you guys, there's a lot of different, some people are criminal justice, some people are nursing, whatever. So I kind of like to know who I'm speaking to as far as that, and to kind of see, what I need to talk to you about in regards of to being sensitive to different issues. So if you could just generally, maybe one at a time, or try to just let me know what your major is, your name and your major. Oh, I see your name. So, but if you want to do, speak to me about what your major is, so that I just kind of know what my audience is. So if you don't mind, going one at a time.
So I'll go from at least the way it appears on my screen, so you guys aren't talking over each other. So we'll start with Miss Gwen.
I'm Gwen, and I'm an exercise science major.
Okay, exercise science. Okay.
Lindsay.
I'm Lindsay. I'm an exercise science pre-occupational therapy major.
Okay, great.
Tori.
I'm Tori, and I'm also exercise science, but pre-PT.
Great.
Cool. Maggie.
I'm psychology major and minoring in theology and business.
Wow. Okay, great. You're diverse. Go ahead.
Kevin.
My major is exercise science, pre-physical therapy.
Wow, there's a lot of exercise science people. Okay, good.
Greg.
Exercise science, pre-physical therapy.
Okay, great.
Maddie.
I'm nutrition and dietetics.
Okay, great.
Sam.
Exercise science, pre-physical therapy.
Okay.
Emily.
Exercise science major with a psych minor.
Okay.
Well, here's a different one. Molly.
Political science, pre-law.
Wow, my goodness, we need you. Okay.
Rachel.
Early childhood education, special education, and a minor in psychology.
Okay, wow, okay.
God bless you.
Yeah, God bless you. Because I'm educating my youngest at home, and I'm ready to, every day, I'm like, I'm ready to hang myself. Today, I'm going to hang myself today. And yesterday was, I'm going to jump off the bridge. So every day I'm trying to talk myself down off the ledge. So I have a newfound appreciation for early elementary ed teaching. Go ahead.
Tolly.
Sorry.
I'm a nursing major and a minor in psychology.
Great. Okay, great.
I'm sorry, her name is actually Emily. I just Tolly. Long story. Jen. J-Lo.
J-Lo.
Science, pre-physical therapy.
Okay.
Jake.
Exercise science, sport management.
Okay, great.
And Yasiri.
I'm majoring in psychology.
Okay, great. All right, well, that's good. It gives me a little bit of background, because I know last year we had some people that were criminal justice. We had a more diverse group, didn't we, Jeff? It seemed like we had nursing, psychology majors. This year, you guys seem to be all exercise science, but that is really important. So, I'll talk a little bit about that, but let me share my screen. Let me have some patience with me. I'm trying to figure it all out myself. I was using it on my students today. I'm like, can you guys work this for me? Because, I'm trying to figure this out. So, all right, now, I don't know. Can you see that or no?
No.
No. Okay, hold on one second. Let me go to you guys. Sorry, have patience with me.
And worst case scenario, if you need to send it to me and and I'll share that. That's fine. But you should be. Let me just make sure I have it set that anybody can.
How about now? Can you
Nope.
see anything? Oh. So you can't see anything?
No. But let me.
Wait a sec. I'm sorry. Sorry to cause you
You're all good.
undue stress.
It's not like anybody's going anywhere.
We got time.
Let me see here. Okay. All right, I'm trying. Screen. How about, do you see anything now?
Yes, you have started screen sharing. So yes, we see your desktop.
Okay, good. So you see the grief?
Yes, yes. We briefly saw Lambo, but now we see the grief.
Okay. All right. So let me start my presentation, you guys. My presentation is entitled The Journey Through Grief. So I just want you to know that grief isn't something that happens and then you get over it. It's a constant journey. And I can tell you that I personally have lived grief. So lived through grief. I'm not somebody just getting up here and saying, oh, you know, talking about this and grief and whatnot. I've actually lived through it. So let me start my presentation a little bit to you. So I have many hats, like many of you. I wear a lot of hats, as Jeff knows. I have my hands in a lot of different pots. My first hat is that I'm a mother and I'm a wife. And my second hat is that I'm a nurse and I'm a teacher. So I take care of retired nuns in a nursing home on the weekends. And I also teach adjunct faculty at Widener University. So I teach nursing to senior nursing students. So I'm struggling now to get my students to graduate this year. So I work with seniors in the community. So the one person that's a nursing major, I do community health. So I'm working out in the community. And this is a big time for us. And then also I'm a student. So as Jeff knows, I'm a person who just has continued my education. I feel like it's really important for me. And I have very positive, great news. I haven't even told you, Jeff, but I have my final defense June 25th.
Oh, yay.
So I will be doing my final defense. I'll be graduating with my doctorate degree in nursing, which has taken me almost six and a half long years. So when you think that you never can do something, you surely can if you put your mind to it. So those are a couple things that I do. Just to talk to you a little bit about my life and why I have experienced grief. And, you know, if I start to have some moments, just please have some, you know, compassion for me right now. It's, you know, I'm dealing a lot with at home. And then, you know, sometimes, like I said, grief is a journey. So tragedy struck my family on December 12th. It was a Saturday in the year 2015. I had left for work. I told you I'm a nurse. I left about 8:30 in the morning, left my 3 young children at home. I had at the time a 5-year-old, that's my Janina, an 8-year-old Jaden, and I have an 11-year-old, or had an 11-year-old at the time. So I left for work and I said goodbye to everybody. I kissed everybody, screamed up to my husband, who was still in bed at the time, because he liked to stay in bed because he worked shift work and whatnot. So I left for the day, and the day was going fine, and I got calls from him about the kids and different things like that. And about 4:30, I got the call that nobody wants to hear. I received a call from my neighbor that there was an emergency at home, that I needed to get home like ASAP. So I ran through the building, and actually my sisters, I take care of Franciscan nuns, they were like, we still remember you running through the building. I grabbed my stuff. My neighbor said there's something wrong with Ed. So I ran out of the building and I ran home, and I was driving down, and I work in Delaware County right next to the Newman University. So I left work and I started driving, and I didn't know what was going on. I just, you know, I didn't even know where Brandywine Hospital was. If you guys live out in Chester County, because I'm from Downingtown, just like Jeff and probably many of you from this area. So I called my girlfriend and I was like, there's been a major thing going on. I have to get to Brandywine Hospital. So I got there, and unfortunately, by the time I had gotten there at 5:30 when I got there, Ed had passed away. I got the word that they tried to resuscitate him, and that at 5:15 they had pronounced him. So it was very hard. Luckily my friend met me there at the hospital. Thankfully, on my en route to the hospital, I called Ed's family and said, I got a call from the EMT that Ed's in cardiac arrest. So they didn't want to tell me over the phone, as many of you are like, they kind of try to want to ease you, but I was like, I'm a nurse and I want to know what's happening. So that's kind of to my detriment. So I did get there, and Ed, had passed, and it was really hard. I didn't really know what to do. I felt like we really don't deal with loss very well. And the nurses at the hospital, I mean, they were nice and whatnot, but not really empathetic to my situation. I kind of was left in the room by myself, and it's kind of made me want to speak to people about grief and loss, and especially for you who are psychology majors, that loss and grief are really a very difficult thing. And so it's really hard, and I know it's a hard topic to talk to people about, and people try to run away from you. I know I've had Ed's family members say to me, I didn't really want to call you because I didn't really want to know what to say, but you really do need that. And we'll talk a little bit about, the support and different things. But that was kind of what happened in my life. And so when I went home to tell my children, who at that time were, unfortunately, my children had witnessed all this. He had collapsed in the bathtub. And so not only did I have to deal with my own loss, I had to deal with trauma loss for my children, who it was a really difficult time for them as well. And, to have to process all that and to kind of come home, and I really didn't know what to say to them. All I said to them was, I have really good news and I have bad news. And the bad news is that Dad passed away tonight, but the good news is that he's with Jesus in heaven and he's not suffering. So I really didn't know how to deal with it. And I felt like the hospital really didn't have an advocate for me to really talk to me about what they could do for me, or resources that I could have. So that's why I really want to reach out and speak to other people, being a healthcare provider, and you guys even who are going into exercise and physical therapy. I mean, it's not just about somebody's physical being. It's about people's mental wellness. And right now, I mean, gosh forbid, I know we're all struggling mentally with what's going on in the world, but you're going to see people coming in that are dealing with loss and grieving issues, and we all have some sort of grief in any sort of way. So I don't want you to just think grief is about loss. It's about other things. It's about divorce. It's about a terminal illness. And I'll talk to you a little bit about a book that I thought was really conducive for grief. It's about even people that have been sexually abused, people that have been raped. It's not just about, loss of a person. It's loss of, some of the things of yourself. And I even said to my students this morning when I Zoomed with them, you guys are grieving. They're grieving not having a graduation. They're seniors. So we all have different things of grieving. So I don't want you to think, loss is a big one, but it's not the only thing. So I want to talk to you a little bit about, what does that mean for people in, the first year? And I know you hear about it, and you hear about different things that people go through the first year, and it's really hard. I just want to give you an overview that, like, the first year, you're in a fog. I remember saying to somebody, to my girlfriend, my life was shattered in a million pieces, and I really don't know where to start to pick it up. And it's funny because in the Kubler-Ross book, And she talks about grief and loss on Grief and Grieving. There's a preface in there from a foreword from Maria Shriver. And as you all know, she's a Kennedy. And there was actually another Kennedy tragedy over the weekend where Robert Kennedy lost his granddaughter. They were canoeing off of Maryland. So the Kennedy family has had terrible tragedy. But I like that she said in the anniversary book, and I just want to quote it, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about some of her sayings is, and I really truly believe this because I say this all the time. The truth is that grief can make you feel like you're going crazy. Grief can make a liar out of you. You say you're doing fine when really your heart is shattered into 1,000 tiny pieces. But everyone wants you to say you're okay, so you do. So you kind of lie and say, yeah, I'm fine, I'm good, you know, I'm trucking along, but really inside you may not be. So I want you to keep that in mind. I know that, you know, that's the analogy I used for a friend. When I saw that in her book, I was like, oh my gosh. But your life is shattered in a million pieces and you really don't know where to start, you know? So the first year, I just felt like everything was in a fog. I was just going through the motions of life. I wanted to die. I was like, part of me died when Ed died. And I was like, you know, I know we weren't together for, you see these couples that are together 40 years. We were together almost 14 years. But it's like a part of you's died. And so it was really hard that year going through all the anniversaries, all the different things, you know, holidays. And you hear people say that where your life is, you're just going through the motions of life, and you really are. And actually my professor, who's the head of the PhD program, said to me when I asked for a leave of absence, she said to me, just remember to take care of yourself. You need to go talk to somebody. And so it was really hard. I worried that fall. I had a lot of stresses and anxiety. And when Ed died, I had to put all that aside. I mean, I had to take a leave of absence from my semester. That's why I'm a little late in getting my schooling finished when some of my friends have graduated. I had to take a leave of absence. I had to go and get public assistance, which was really the hardest thing for me. To walk in and ask somebody for help, to get Medicaid for my children, to get medical insurance, because Ed carried all of our medical benefits. And when he died December 12th, we only had his pay until December 31st. He was the breadwinner. I mean, I worked, I'm a nurse, but it wasn't like he was the breadwinner. He brought it home, he had our insurance, you know, all these different things. So I had to go out and go and get public assistance. And it was the hardest thing. I told my one girlfriend, I cried walking into the office because, you know, you never think you're going to be in that boat. You really do. And, you know, it made me reflect upon what one of my professors said to me. She said to me, we had a meeting to recap the semester, December 9th, 3 days before Ed died. And she said, you know, I talked to my students about city team ministry, and that's something down in Chester where they minister to the poor in Chester. And she told the students, you know, it was raining one day, it was pouring down rain, and there was a line wrapped around the building down, you know, far, and students, and these people were standing in line for coats. And her message to students were like, she would give this message when she would speak to them about, you know, these people, or, you know, the people in line, the people reaching out for help. She would say, you never know when you're going to go from having everything to nothing. And to this day, I'm really thankful that she said that to me, because I try to tell people, you know, it's really, really hard to go from having everything to nothing in 3 days. I mean, like, I had the world, and then in 3 days, it was all pretty much gone, you know? So, you know, when you look at people, you know, one of my messages to you is like, when you do see people on public assistance or reaching out for help, it was really a difficult thing for me. But my friends said to me, you know, it's people like you that it's meant for. And, you know, that helped me a little bit. But you see messages, and I saw messages on Facebook about like the trash that go to use this, and you know what? It's not trash. They're not, people aren't, because they need to reach out for help. It doesn't mean you're low class. It doesn't mean you're trash. It just means that you may need help at a certain time. So just remember that. That's one of my big things that I try to, don't ever stereotype people that have to use something like that. Because for somebody like me, my dignity and pride, it was really difficult to go reach out for help. And so, that was kind of my first year. Was really, really challenging, and just trying to pick up the pieces and just feeling like a part of me was really gone. So, and different people talk about different things happening and hitting them certain years. Well, the second year was really, really hard for me. I had started in January, after the second year after Ed had passed, like panic attacks. Like I was like, oh my God, what if I die? Who's going to raise my children? So I was having all these things. And then in February, it really hit me. I was I was doing a private duty for a friend, and I happened to be in the hospital when her dad had gone, he had really failed, and they had intubated him. And she said to me, and I know she didn't mean harm in the situation, but when we were going the elevator up to the ICU, she said to me, Lori, I got to say goodbye to my dad and tell him how much I loved him, and you didn't. And I said, yeah. And that whole ride home from the hospital, I sobbed, and it really hit me. And from a couple months after that, when my daughter was making Holy Communion, and I was like, Ed's not here to see that, I really started to spiral. I noticed I was crying a lot. I would go to like Wegmans parking lot, and I was good in Wegmans, but I got out and I started putting groceries in the trunk, and I started crying a lot. And I was like, you know what? I got to go seek help. Like, I'm really struggling, just struggling. I did all the things that everyone else has to do, but I was like, I'm really an emotional wreck. And it was really hard for me. I did go see my nurse practitioner, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my blood pressure's up, and I'm, a really healthy person. And she goes, you know why? Because it was really hard for you to come here. And I said, it really is. And I still, I had my children in therapy. I was in therapy, but it was really hard. And I had to kind of be like, you know what, even as a healthcare provider, like, and some of you are going to be out in exercise or PT or whatever field you're in, it's hard to go get help. And it's hard to say, I can't handle it myself, and it's just too overwhelming. And so I did have to do that. And I was glad I did. I had to, reach out and go on some medicine to help me through, but like I got through it, and so it was a really difficult time. And she said to me, I know it's really hard for you, but, sometimes we can't control all those things, and we have to, go seek help. And I had a great nurse say something to me when I was going in for procedure. She said, you know what, how you have to be a good mom and a good woman? You have to take care of your mind, your body, and your spirit. And for you guys in psychology and whatnot, it's like, you know what? And another person said to me, and I thought this is so true, you hear it all the time. If you're on a plane and the plane's going down, and I have my 3 kids next to me, and if I don't give myself the oxygen and I'm on the ground, like collapsed, how am I going to help them? So what do you have to do? You have to give the oxygen to yourself. And you have to take care of your own self first. So that's what I've kind of taken over that motto. I said to my one friend, this year, it's about self-care. This year, I've decided it's about self-care. And you'll see that you have to manage and self-care. It's like, even when some of you, if you ever, are going to be therapists, the psychology majors, my therapist said something to me, and I thought it was really interesting. She said, you know what? I was in school, and the teacher was saying to us, how many of you have been to therapy? And she said, not many of us raised our hand. And he said, well, how do you expect to teach, or how do you expect to be a therapist if you don't really know what it's about? So just remember that, just remember that it's, it's really hard, and, but, you have to reach out for help, and, that's what I did. And I'm in a better place, and it's, I've been able to manage more and still, go talk to somebody. So And we'll talk a little bit about, some more things that I, want to talk to you about. But let me go on to the next slide. So as you know, I'm sure, Jeff taught you about the stages of grief, but I want to kind of relate them to my situation and or to, what you see from Kubler-Ross. So as you know, grief was really first discussed by the Swiss-American psychiatrist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in 1969. She was working with terminally ill patients when she kind of came up with this idea of the stages of grief. So, and I want to talk to you more about at the end about this, but let's go into the first one, denial. So denial is something or situation that gives you more time to process the loss. It's almost like you're numb. You're numb to what's going on. One hides the emotions to deal with sorrow. We hide all that. We kind of just keep to ourselves. And I wanted to give you some examples of denial. So here, looking at divorce, this is what somebody might say. They're just upset and it'll be fine tomorrow. Meaning like, they're not really going to divorce me. They're having a bad day, kind of basically. For somebody who's terminally ill, this isn't happening to me. The results have to be wrong. And for loss, he's gone. He's going to be home later. He went out to go to work, whatever. And in relating it to my personal experience for denial, after Ed died, I was feeling like he was going to walk through the door, that he had just gone to work or had stepped out temporarily. For me, the way I kind of dealt with denial was I kept his shoes by the front door and his lunch bag in the same place on top of the refrigerator. And even today, sometimes I still have his lunchbox on top of the refrigerator. I know he's not coming home, but I guess I just can't get rid of it, and his shoes by the front door was, that he was going to leave his shoes by the front door. So, that was really hard for me. And so that's kind of like an example of what denial is. So let's go into anger. Anger is another coping mechanism, and it's used to hide many emotions that you carry. Your anger can be aimed at people, the person that died, or inanimate objects. And anger subsides the feelings or emotions you have hidden, and then they may come to the surface so you can deal with them. So examples of anger for a divorced person might be, I really hate him. I loathe him. I don't ever want to see them. I hate him. Terminal illness. Did God desert me? How could he let this happen to me? And for loss, if he cared more for himself, would he have been alive? So for me, my personal experience with anger was Ed had not been feeling good for a few weeks before he died. And I urged him to go to the doctors, and he said he was fine. He was healthy. He was a runner. He completed a workout and was found to be in good health. The other thing I want you to know is that, and I'll talk about it more at the end, these stages, they really can come and go. And like I said, Maria Shriver saying, like, you go through a gamut of emotions. And so there might be different times I've noticed that I go through severe anger. Anger, that why has this happened to me? This doesn't happen to people like me. This happens to other people. I'm supposed to be empathetic as a healthcare professional to other people. This doesn't happen to people like me. I mean, it really was really a hard situation to deal with. And I still go through anger a lot of times, about a lot of different things. So I think that's, like I said, it's really a challenging thing to kind of go through. And it's not something that kind of comes and goes, or not something that just goes, you go through it, it can come back. And let's say bargaining. You may feel helpless and vulnerable and look for ways to regain control. One may use statements like what if or if only. This is a way for one to postpone the emotions of grief, such as sadness, confusion, or hurt. So if you're divorced, if I had spent more time with him, would he have stayed? For terminal illness, if only we had gone to the doctor sooner, would we have found this out sooner? For loss, if only I had been home, would he have been alive? And so from my personal experience, I kept going over in my mind, what if I was home? And was I given what if I was home and given the chance to perform CPR? Would he have been alive? Could he have survived? If only I could have spared my children from going through this. I was supposed to protect them. So that was a really hard thing for me because as the mother, I'm supposed to protect my children and they're not supposed to see this. They're supposed to have a normal life. And my children, and I'll talk to you more about children, my children had some similar things that they said. My oldest daughter, who had found Ed, said to me, or said at one of our sessions, what if I checked on Dad sooner? Would he have been alive? My son said, I should have turned Dad over in the tub and pounded on his chest. And that was really hard to hear because it was like, why wasn't I there? But then here's the thing. My friend said, you know what, you were meant to be there because it would have really been hard for you. Because what if I couldn't have saved him? Because as we know, CPR isn't the end all. And, that doesn't mean, it's going to save his life. So, that's a very hard thing. And it was hard to hear my children say that. And so, that was really a hard time for me. So let's go on to depression. This is kind of the quiet stage. We embrace and work through our emotions. One may isolate from others to cope or stay busy. Depression may be more difficult to define. Some people may feel foggy, heavy, or confused. People that are divorced might say, why go on at all? What's it worth? People with terminal illness, my whole life has come to this terrible end. And for loss, it's what am I without him? What is my purpose? From my personal experience, I had a very difficult time, like I said, to the second year. I noticed myself crying and felt more alone. It was a difficult time for me, and I did seek help. And I kind of thought, like, what's my purpose to go on? But I had to kind of pull myself up and be like, my purpose every day to get out of bed is my children. And without that purpose, and that's what my therapist said, and you may see people who are older who have lost, they may need to stay in bed. She said, if I didn't have children, I might have been in bed a month and couldn't get out of bed. But I didn't have the choice. And I had to get my rear end out of bed and go back to work and take care of my children and try to, live a normal life. So let's go on to the next one. This is acceptance. And it does not mean that you've moved on from the loss. You have accepted it and come to a better understanding of what has happened to you. You still may have good and bad days. It's like I say to somebody, I feel like when I tell you grief is an emotional roller coaster, it really is. And that's just what Maria Shriver said. She said, it's like a gamut of emotions. And sometimes I'm thinking, am I bipolar? Like, why am I happy today? But there's a lot in life, and I know all of us have it. There's a lot of times where we go through hills, we hit the top of a hill. Then we hit the dang-gum valley. And I'm like, and then we're just climbing to the top. We're climbing to the top and we're trying to get there. And you know what, after Ed died, it was the first thing I listened to some music. And I'm not like a big Miley Cyrus fan or whatever, nothing's wrong with her. But her song, The Climb, is so relatable because it's and I cried every time I first heard it because I'm thinking, it is about the climb. It's about the climb, it's falling down, it's what I would say to McKenna's therapist was, it's like I'm climbing up the mountain. And guess what? I get like halfway up and I'm sliding the freak down. And then I got to go back up and then I'm going back down. I said, it's like putting 3, steps ahead and then taking 5 back. And it's really, really hard. It's really challenging. So for acceptance, for divorce, you might say, this was a healthy choice for me. You know, I'm becoming a healthier person. For terminal loss, I had the opportunity to get my affairs in order to be prepared for the end. For loss, I was fortunate to be with him for so long and had a wonderful life. And I think of that, you know, all the time, because I think, you know, I was really blessed to have somebody so wonderful in my life who was so positive. Not that I'm not a positive person, you know, and not that I'm an ER either, but I try to look at the positive in every situation because Ed was like that. Ed was, you know, every day that he got up, he would say, every day is a great day that you can put your feet on the ground. And I'm thinking, really? Okay. But after he died, you know, I said to somebody, my New Year's resolution for life is to try to be positive and look at the, you know, the silver lining in everything. It's like what, you know, Jeff did to you guys on Thursday. Like, what's the positives of staying home? You know, it means having a better relationship with your family and different things like that. So that's really, that's what you have to kind of look at. And I've tried to remain really positive. I have somebody on here, and I'm not going to have you kind of like look at her video. But this is Nora McInerney. I think that's how you pronounce it. She has a really great, it's like a 15-minute talk. So I tried to find a shorter version. So maybe that's something you can look at after class or whatever. She talks about acceptance. And, you know, acceptance is basically, it's not moving on in life. It's moving forward. That what happens is in life, she lost her husband, and she talks about, you know, finding, like, she had a lot of loss, and she jokes about it in the beginning and talks about losing, you know, her father to cancer, you know, miscarrying a baby, and then losing her husband to brain cancer like a month later. She's had terrible loss. But she talks about moving forward. And what happens in your life, that's why, you know, even if you have somebody who, you know, has experienced loss or you've experienced loss in any way, shape, or form, this is a great video because she talks about moving forward. You never move on. And that's what she's saying in her relationship. She met a man and got married. But she said Aaron, who was her husband who passed, is always in her life and is a part of that. If Aaron didn't die, she wouldn't have met Matthew. If Aaron didn't die, she wouldn't be this. So it kind of forms you. It kind of, you know, you try to move forward. You try to put one foot in front of the other. It doesn't mean it's easy. It's really not. It's really challenging. And I can tell you, you know, there's days I think, oh, I can't do this. I just really can't do this. I was having one of those moments this morning. Like you guys, you know, I struggle a lot with different things, with different hats that I have to wear, but I'm trying to move forward. I'm trying to take one step at a time and try to become, you know, a better person, you know, a better woman, a better professor, you know, just to try to improve myself. Somebody gave me the greatest, you know, pep talk after Ed died, and she said, you know what? Maybe this is your time to work on yourself as a woman. And my children, I love them, and they really do give me meaning, but they don't define me as a person. So that's why I continued my education. I didn't give up. I felt like throwing in the towel, but I didn't give up, and I, you know, tried to keep on moving forward. And, you know, because of that, you know, I am where I am. And then, you know, looking back in maybe 10 years, I'll say, great, I'm glad I did my PhD. Like, I didn't put my life on hold. I love my children and everything. But when they leave the nest, there's more to me than that. So I'm a nurse, you know, I'm an educator. I'm, you know, I'm a friend to people. I'm, you know, a mother. I just have a lot of different hats. So this is her TED Talk. So you can kind of, you know, look at that if you want to. I can forward Jeff the link. I just feel like it's really a good thing. It just talks to you really about what it's like when someone dies and, you know, when you're trying to move forward in life. So it's not easy. It's very challenging. It's probably about the hardest thing you have to do, but yeah, I have to do it. So my next slide talks a little bit about your physical symptoms of grief. And as you know, a lot of us have, you'll see that there's a lot of physical symptoms associated with it. Headaches, just the stress, the headaches, heart problems. You see a lot of times people have heart attacks, or when they say they died of a broken heart, a lot of times that's kind of what happens after, when especially you see couples, the stress, they may experience a heart attack, shortness of breath, different things like that. So they actually do have, cardiac problems. And so for the one person who's a nurse, you will see, it may, be a trickle down effect with someone's health, and even you guys who are psychology majors. Gastrointestinal problems or stomach problems, you might see somebody has a lot of stomach aches, nausea, loss of appetite, or sometimes in some situations, I think people are binge eating. I think that's what we're doing now. We're grieving, and we're binge eating. If you see things like, I saw something funny, it's not funny about grief or, physical symptoms, but I saw somebody had something on Facebook. It was like a refrigerator with a bikini, and it was like, don't touch the stuff inside the refrigerator. Like, looking at this bikini. So, we can binge eat to kind of like, that have that fulfillment, and that kind of fulfills us. And that's, why people overeat. Looking at fatigue, body aches, pain, you just feel like general weakness. And sometimes they will put people on some type of pain medication. The other thing is a weakened immune system. What happens is your resistance really goes down. And I can tell you from experience, so Ed died in December. In June, I felt horrible. I was going and going, and I thought, oh gosh, I feel really bad. I was experiencing body aches, and my throat was hurting. And here for me, having being run down, I ended up having strep throat. And I find for me, that's kind of when my immune system gets weakened, I start to have strep throat. It's like, a matter of fact, I started last week, I'm thinking, I think I'm getting strep throat. But, what I do is, and I tell my kids is, I try to take a lot of vitamin C. And, you guys that are, exercise people, it's like taking vitamin C, trying to have a good diet, different things. So I try to do that and try to get some rest and whatnot. So those are just some of the physical symptoms that there could be probably tons more, but this is something you may see predominantly. And then for people, the emotional and mental effects of grief. So people can experience panic attacks, anxiety, addiction, depression, sleep issues, suicidal thoughts. So panic attacks, I know I told you I experienced them about, going into the second year was January, when I thought I was really almost having chest pains. I was like, and I actually relapsed in January with having a serious panic attack, and had to really talk myself down, because we experienced another almost like a PTSD event. My children and I, my neighbor was found dead in her home, an older woman, and I wasn't home. I was at work again. And so thankfully my neighbors ran down to kind of console them, because fire trucks started coming. Policemen, they ended up having to break her door down. She had been dead in there for a couple of days probably. And then my neighbor thankfully got them away from the windows, because the coroner came down. And for me, I relapsed. It's like when I had that, like that patient who went bad, I started experiencing PTSD. And I started having a panic attack when I got home. I went down to my room and kind of in the basement, and I just kind of try to pull myself together and talk myself down. But things like that will cause you panic, and the fear of me dying and leaving my children. So it's real. It's really real. And PTSD, like, originally after Ed had died, every time I saw an ambulance, I was like I had to talk myself down. So, and so did my children, so it's and the anxiety, the anxiety is really hard. you know, and we all have that addiction, you know, alcoholism, drugs, you know, those kinds of things to numb the pain. And it's very hard. I try not to, you know, think, you know, I try to work through it, and that's why you go see a therapist. But some people, you know, really can't, and they have to, you know, substitute it with alcohol. But the problem with alcohol is a depressant. And so when you start drinking, that brings you down. You know, it's not going to bring you up, it's bringing you down. So when people say stuff to me about, oh, I'm surprised you don't drink a bottle of wine a day. And I'm like, well, that doesn't really numb what I've been through. You know, I have to deal with it. And, you know, it's very hard. Depression, you know, that's kind of what I told you I experienced. And, you know, people do experience depression where they're isolated and they don't want to get out of bed and they, you know, whatever. And it's really, really hard. Sleep issues. And I know you were talking about this on Thursday. A lot of people can't sleep. I notice I can't either. A lot of times I can't relax. And then what happens is it does make you, I feel like sometimes I'm like, I can't remember what I did. Or when you guys talked about car accidents, motor vehicle accidents. Well, that's what kind of happens. I mean, you have these problems and you're not sleeping and then you can't concentrate. Or, I mean, I know this sounds really funny and I want to tell you, you know, really truly how it is, but there's some semesters where I'm really struggling with my students. Not because they're bad students. I have fantastic, I've really been lucky to have wonderful students, but there's some semesters, and I don't have a ton of students. I may have like this semester 17 for clinical. There may be semesters where I have a really hard time memorizing their names. I'm just so overwhelmed and bogged down that, and sleep deprived, and just my mind is all over the place that I'm like, oh my gosh, like, okay, calm down. Try to remember who these students are, you know, and so I feel like sometimes I'm really walking in a fog again sometimes. So it's very hard. And sometimes even suicidal thoughts people may have, that, you know, I know sometimes, like one time I thought, oh, why don't I just pull in front of this car? I just can't, it's just really hard to live. It's hard to keep on going. It really is hard to keep on going.
So do we need to be concerned about how many times you've said you want to jump off the bridge this week? Uh-oh.
I'm okay. I'm okay.
Okay, all right.
I have to talk myself down. I say to people, I got to talk myself off the ledge. So I'm okay. And my kids, we laugh about it because I'm like, McKenna, I'm jumping off the bridge today. And yesterday I drew a hangman on my calendar. Work sense of humor. I'm sorry. But anyway, so, you know, and my students actually had a case study, and I thought it was really great for you, especially psychology majors, when you talk about dealing with people that have suicidal thoughts. My students actually were reviewing a case study and about crises and things, and it was making a suicide contract. So, you know, the contract would be like, you know, you and I, like I come into your clinic and I say, look, I'm really suicidal. And I would sign a contract saying if I start to feel like I'm going to do something to myself, that I would call this person or this person or this person to kind of help me through it. And so sometimes when you see people that are coming in like that, you know, it's like, you know, you have to really act because maybe, you know, they're really reaching out for help, or it's the quiet ones who aren't reaching out for help who are going to do something. So sometimes, you know, the people that are out there saying, I feel like I'm going to hurt myself, that's a cry. If you know, if you don't do it and they're quiet about it, sometimes they have a plan. They're going to do it. So, and I wanted to talk to you things. And the other thing is, you know, when we go talk about depression and things, and grief, there is something called complicated grief. And I want you to be aware that that may be people that aren't getting through the grieving process. And I'm not saying we all don't grieve and it's a journey and all these things, but you may notice that these people are very depressed. They can't get out of bed. They have suicidal thoughts. They have the inability to stop blaming themselves. They can't do it. They're like, what if I done this? I did something wrong, you know, whatever. And they're also unable to perform normal activities of daily living. I mean, going to a job, and that is very complicated grief. And that's something where, you know, you really need to give a referral to those people. But I want to talk a little bit about when you're talking about these physical and emotional things. I want to talk a little bit about children, especially my own children. I can talk to you from experience with their loss, because we don't really think about kids. We think about, oh, our loss, and as adults, it's really, really challenging. But for children, it's very challenging too. And I've had to deal a lot with my children. They did go through trauma therapy, and they've come through that, and they're, you know, they're getting through all that. But they've had physical symptoms. I know my son, when I think about him, I guess it was the second year, and Janina was making communion. He went through horribly anger stage. He was about 10 years old. He was throwing things across the room. You know, he was having a lot of, and like a year later, he went through a lot of stomach issues. You know, he's like, Mom, my stomach hurts, and he didn't want to go to school, and it was just a lot of things. And so it was very challenging for him. He had a lot of challenging moments. My oldest, as you know, as Jeff knows, she threw herself in a volleyball. Sometimes I worry about her. I don't know that she's really hit the grieving process. You know, I feel like she cried very minimally, and I'm not saying everyone has to bawl and do whatever, but although I'll have to tell you, when I went to get them therapy, she was the one who was very adamant she was not going to therapy. She said, I'm not going, and you're not making me. And I said, get yourself in the car. I'm your advocate. You don't have a choice. You're going. And so I got her down to get her therapy, and now she's 15, and she's like, Mom, I love going to Linda, because Linda said that's her therapist. Linda said, I think she's doing great. I think, you know, she can transition out of, you know, care or whatever. And McKenna goes, nope, I still want to go. She sees her once a month, and she's like, I need it, you know, to talk through different teenage issues and whatnot, and to have a neutral party. And my son, who went through those rough periods of time, like I said, he went through anger. He went through oppositional defiant behavior. He actually was really bad that fall, because I kept threatening him. I'm like, I'm going to put you in, you know, Valley Forge Military Academy, because he was giving me such a hard time. He like stole my credit card, ordered stuff online. I mean, I was like, but he's done really well. And he's, you know, not to say that he misses school quite a bit. It's still a challenge for him health-wise, but he has other health issues, but he seems to be getting through. And his therapist left about a year or so ago. And she said, I think you're doing really good. And he's like, you know what, Maggie, I still want to come because I feel like I need it for my mental health. So, you know, here's a 12-year-old who's like, I need it for my own mental health. I'm like, my gosh, like, you know, how adult is that? My youngest has really had a lot of struggles. So I want to be honest with you about when you were talking about eating disorders, and you're going to be really talking about it next Tuesday. I want you to know that it's real. It happens to children, and I've lived it. My daughter, who is going to be 10 next week, like I said, she's been through the trauma of my husband dying when she was 5 years old. She drew Ed in the tub over and over again. That was her kind of therapy. But anyway, she unfortunately has gotten through that tragedy. But about 2 years ago, she experienced another really huge setback in her recovery. I guess it was September of 2018. She was over my mom's house, and I was at a volleyball tournament right up the street, and my mom lives near Hibernia Park, and she was attacked over 100 times by Yellow Jackets. She was seriously traumatized. I had to, you know, rush her to the emergency room, and she kept saying, am I going to die, Mom? And I'm going to die. And then the hardest part for me was my children. The other two were like, Mom, can you send us pictures of her so we know she's okay? Because the last thing they remember is their dad dying in the ER. So I sent them pictures and I said, she's going to be okay. She's going to be okay. And I had to try to reassure her. Meanwhile, inside, I'm like dying. Like, oh my gosh, like this is happening. And in my mind, I was like, I mean, I had given her Benadryl, I had given her ibuprofen, but I had to rush her because she was stung so many times. So that was her trauma in like September. And she went through such severe anxiety. When I talk about anxiety and you know, grief and you know, things that she's experienced. And then about a month later, she experienced another setback. She was eating a Jolly Rancher and swallowed it whole. And it really scared her. And so she then was like, I'm afraid to swallow. So I had to make her soft foods. And I had to rush her in December to a nutritionist. She had lost 7 pounds and she was skinny to begin with. And when you talk about eating disorders, and I want you to see with the anxiety, she's lived it. For her, the only thing she controlled was eating. The nutritionist said to me, she is the youngest kid I've ever seen who knew exactly how many calories were in a bag of Fritos. She had, you know, little bags of Fritos, and she said, Mom, do you know one bag of Fritos is 120 calories? I'm like, what do you care? Like, you're skinny. Like, I've never even taught you to read a bag and look at calories, you know. But for her, that was the only thing she can control. And it was really a hard process for us to get her to where she is. I mean, we've struggled with behavioral therapists. She has an IEP in there where it talks about she can enter the side of the building when there's bees out in the recess yard. She has a thing in there for snacks at 10 a.m. so that she can have a designated snack time. So when you talk about anxiety and PTSD, it really is real and it's hard. And when you've been through trauma as a young child, you know, different things spring it up. And especially when I told you about my neighbor, we all kind of relapsed a little bit into PTSD. So I forgot to mention, when I talked about Maria Shriver and I talked about Kubler-Ross, I read something recently about Kubler-Ross, that book, when I talked to you about, was about terminally ill patients. That was a study, that was the clients or the patients she was working with. So what I've seen and what they've kind of said was that basically, you know, they've adapted that to people who have loss. It doesn't mean that you go through those stages of loss. It doesn't mean it's a chronological order. It means that you may experience it, you may not, who knows, but that you can't really, it was really meant for terminally ill patients. So just remember that you know, you should never deny somebody feeling grief. And that's what that's what they kind of said, was that grief is something that you say it is. And so, you know, you can't really go by these stages, because I know there's times I'm still angry. I go through, you know, anger stages. I mean, one time I've said to the kids, and I feel sorry about saying things, but when I'm really overwhelmed, I don't, you know, it's hard to really say it, but I said in anger, you know, your dad got the easy part. I got the hard part. You know, I'm here living and trying to raise you, you know, and I know that's really harsh to say, but it's sometimes, you know, it is really hard. It's, you know, I had to vent, and I know I shouldn't do them. I really have to do that to my therapist, but it's really hard. It's really hard. And I'm not saying it's, you know, easy about grief. And so, you know, I just want you to know that it's really challenging. But I want to, you know, before I leave you on any, you know, before I leave you on my last note about things, let me just try to see if I had a couple of quotes I highlighted in here. So when we talk about loss too, and this is from Maria Shriver, which I really liked it. It was in the anniversary issue of Kubler-Ross. We live in a society that wants us to get back to normal as soon as possible. We're expected to go back to work immediately, keep moving, get on with our lives, but it doesn't work that way. And then she talks a little bit about, you know, crying and you know, coming to terms with, you know, our grief. She says, I think there's a fear that if you start crying, you're never going to be able to stop. You think, what will I ever do? How will I ever survive without this person? But you do. You survive. You don't go on the same, but you do go on. And she said, talks about being vulnerable. And I don't know if any of you guys like listen to, I love her talks, and she was introduced to me by someone, Brene Brown. And she is a psychologist, and she does qualitative research about vulnerability. And Maria Shriver says, I'm a big believer in being vulnerable and open to grief. And Kubler-Ross, in their book, she says, taught her to be vulnerable. And I think what the problem is in our society, we're supposed to be strong and have courage and not, and that's what Brene Brown says. She said, we don't want to show vulnerability. Even in the workforce, and when we're out working, and she said, because we're not allowed to be vulnerable, we're not allowed to be creative. So the problem is, it takes a lot of courage to say, I'm really vulnerable right now, and putting yourself out there. But and a couple other things that she says that I just wanted to quote. The stages have evolved since their introduction, like I was saying to you about the stages of grief. And they've been very misunderstood over the past few decades. They were never meant to help tuck messy emotions into neat packages. They are responses to losses that many people have, but there's not a typical response to loss, and there is no typical loss. So like I said to you, it's not just about losing a person. It might be about losing a relationship. Even, as a student, if you've been with somebody for a couple of years and you lose that relationship, it's about, being, sexually abused, mentally abused, physically abused, just different things that are lost to you. And this is what I really love when she talks about being vulnerable and having courage, but she says here, grief has made me brave. In opening up to it, in allowing myself to really feel it, I have grown stronger. But in order to do that, I needed to hear that message that it was okay and in fact crucial to grieve. So it is really important to grieve, and not to, it's okay. I mean, in society, we don't think that. We think, you just experience it and move on, but it's not that way. And, unfortunately, grief is now a part of my life, but you know what? I want to use that as a ploy to teach kids like you, or, people around me, that it's okay to grieve, and that there are lessons to be learned out of it. And I want to tell you a couple lessons I told the students last year. One, I think I want you to really take home from this presentation and take it to heart, is that as a healthcare professional, I think it's important to speak to a therapist about trauma you've experienced so that you do not suffer from PTSD later. It's very hard for us as healthcare workers, even in, I know a lot of you are exercise and physical therapy and whatnot. In anything you do, if you've experienced trauma in your life, it doesn't mean it's not later going to come to the surface. For me, it was that event of that person going, bad on me. It was the event of my neighbor, being taken out of the house and reliving like I wasn't there for my kids again. So I want you to kind of know that, PTSD and whatnot, you have to, as a healthcare provider, you have to take care of yourselves too. So you have to throw yourself the oxygen line. And if you start to struggle, from what has happened in your life and it resurfaces in any of your life, say you've experienced trauma as a young child or whatever, and you haven't dealt with it, you deal with it. You just try to deal with it the best you can. I know I told the kids' therapist, I said, I'm really worried about them when they're in their 20s having PTSD. And she goes, you know what? You deal with it when it happens. And so you may not happen now, but if you have something like that impact your life, it's important to go deal with it, deal with your own emotions. And it's very hard to go reach out for help, but you have to do it. And sometimes you have to do things, to help yourself, and, and that's what I've had to do. The second thing I kind of want, everyone to take home from this is never stereotype what a person looks like that may need assistance in any way. I know you see me and think, oh my gosh, she has it all together. Well, I really don't, but it's a good facade. But I had to reach out for help. And, a lot of times our dignity and pride really hold us back. And And, thinking about what are people going to think of me? Am I less of a person because I need public assistance right now? When I get a full-time teaching job, it'll be different. I can go and get my kids health insurance and whatnot, but, try not to really stereotype people. And that's what I feel like is really important. My other message is live life to the fullest each day, because you're not guaranteed tomorrow. And that was a great lesson one of my nuns said to me when she always asked me, she said, how are you doing today? And I'm like, I'm living day by day. And she goes, you know why? Because you're not guaranteed tomorrow. And it's changed and made me appreciate life totally differently. My next thing is try to use your grief to do something positive or something that's negative in your life. What we did, and Jeff and his family were a part of it, we put together a race in Ed's memory. Ed was a runner. And so we started a scholarship in Ed's name at Newman University. I know that's your arch rivals, but I'm a Newman grad and whatever, and so is Ed. So I put together a scholarship in his name for a student who has experienced the loss of a family member, who has a financial need, who has a certain GPA. And so, our race is really important to us, and it's really therapeutic to us. And the second thing is, and I'll actually get to it. I just want to show you.
And by the way, Lori, I put both links, both to the TED Talk, the Nora McInerney, and then also to the Coco race on there as well.
Perfect, because that's our race is in September, so we would love to. It's kind of a family race, but I want to show you. This is my new, our new normal. This is my family. My oldest, McKenna's 15. That was our Christmas picture. One book I meant to tell you about is, I know we're wrapping up in the next 5 minutes, but a great book that I found was a little more empathetic to situations. Kubler-Ross, I feel like, is a very, how can I say, more of a cold book. I found a great book that was called Option B. I don't know if you guys know Sheryl Sandberg, who's the Facebook, she's the COO of Facebook. She has a book called Option B, because in life, you don't have option A, you have to go to option B. And she talks about not just the loss she had, her husband died, but she does incorporate, like I said, divorce, physical abuse, sexual abuse, all these different things. And I felt like her story was really heartwarming, and that, I felt it was relatable. And then, so that's my normal. And then I just wanted to end with you to say, this picture this picture depicts what the weight of grief is. Grief is not something, that's why I said it's a journey. It's not something that you go and you say, oh, I grieved, I'm better. Maybe some people are that way. You're not going to find that predominantly. This is just an analogy to show you that this is what walking around with grief is like. It's like carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders. And I know when I went into my daughter's IEP, her principal said to me, you know what, you got some pretty broad shoulders. And I'm thinking, no, I don't, because there's times I don't feel brave and I feel like I can't do it. But I just feel like I have to get that message out. And my other ending note is that last year, Jeff sent me an evaluation of a student, and I have to tell you, it really helped me because, talking to you guys is really therapeutic. Having our race is really therapeutic. But when I got that evaluation from a student, I felt like this is what it's all about. What it said was that, I was a good advocate for grief and loss. And what I thought was really great is that student said, I was really struggling with grief and struggling in general. And they actually went to the guy, your counselor at school at Immaculata, and sought out help. And so my really, I guess, reason for doing this is that maybe I can help one person. I don't ever think I tell my students, don't think you're going to go out and change the world, because you're not. But if I can change one person or help one person in life, that's what I'm meant to do. So I want to just put it out there. If you ever want to talk to me, I know you don't know me as a person. I'm really personable, as Jeff knows. But if you ever, I know one student did reach out to me because I know a lot of people don't want to talk, and feel awkward asking questions. And I don't want to hold you over too much, but if you feel like you do want to ask me a question, it's fine. If not, I will give you my email address at Widener. I feel like a student did reach out to me and said, I really wanted to present or give your pointers on what your presentation was about to another psychology major. So if you ever want to reach out to me, I'll give you my email address. It's L as in Lori, A, Kokoszka, and maybe you see my last name, or maybe Jeff, you can post it. It's LA Kokoszka at widener.edu. So if you ever want to reach out and ask me a question, or you don't feel comfortable, speaking and asking me questions at the final, couple minutes, I would love to hear from you. And I hope that, this presentation helped you, and that, I have lived this experience. I'm not somebody just talking, out my butt about, whatever. I really have lived it and continue to live it every single day. And I'm like you, I'm trying to juggle life, finish my degree and whatnot. And, one thing my husband always said is never give up. So never give up on what you dream of, never give up on yourself, and just try to keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Lori. I know that's very personal, and it's very difficult, I'm sure, at times to talk about. Do you have a second in case anybody has any questions? I know we're
I have nothing planned, so that's fine.
Okay.
If you want to stay on, or I know a lot of times last year they didn't feel comfortable and they came to me after class, and I know it's a really difficult situation because we're not in a classroom, but I'll stay on a couple minutes if you need me to, whatever you want. If anyone wants to speak to me. If you don't feel comfortable, I totally understand. Please reach out to me, email me. And then, if you email me, I can actually give you my cell phone number if you ever need to talk. So just know that, people like me are here for you. I didn't say one thing, but because I totally forgot, but as you guys talk about interventions that you could do with people is exercise, especially people that are exercise. Encourage people to spend time in nature, go to therapy, looking at medication use if you can't, can't handle different things. Social support, always assess social support. I'm so blessed. I have wonderful friends like Jeff and Dana who are always here for me, who are like, what do you need us to do? But a lot of people don't have that. And so please, assess that and make sure you incorporate that. But the exercise is a big thing. I know that when I was starting to get really depressed before the holidays, I enrolled myself into that Legion transformation, and I was doing intense exercise, and it really did help me mentally. And so I stopped crying a little bit and things. So those are just a couple things that you can do to talk to people about ways to cope.
Did anybody have anything that they wanted to ask or mention right now? I think I spelled your name right in the chat for your email.
Okay, it's Loco, L-O-K-O, K-O. It's K-O-K-O-S as in Sam, Z as a zebra, K-A.
Okay, but it's L-O-K. It's
L-A.
Oh, L-A. Okay, I got it right then.
L.A. Kokoszka, like Los Angeles. Come on. L.A.
Okay, L.A. Kokoszka. Okay.
L.A. Kokoszka at widener.edu. So if you have any, like I said, if you want to talk, and I understand you feeling private about that, and that's fine. I totally get that.
Great. Well, going once, going twice. If you guys don't have anything else, then I just want to say thank you to you, Lori. And we will have, we'll do class on Thursday like we talked about. If you can't be there because it's technically Easter break, even though there's no—
You're all confined. You're confined to 4 walls.
Right. But so I will be here, and we'll continue to talk about the nutrition, eating disorder stuff, so that way we're prepared next week for Allison. And I am actually working on a very special guest that may be able to come, it would be my crowning achievement. And I have had a Miss America contestant on before, and this even tops that, I think. So if I can make this work, I think you guys will like it. So I'm trying. We'll see. But anyway, I'll see everybody on Thursday. And Lori, thank you. You're always welcome to join class whenever you want.
No, that's fine. It was nice. I'm sorry that I didn't get to see you in person, but like I said, reach out to me if anyone needs anything. And thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See you guys.
Yeah.